Welcome back to the AI Ripple Effect podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Matthew Spencer, Director of Sales at Connective Supply Chain Solutions. Matthew, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Likewise. So why don't we start by you telling us a bit about yourself, your background, and then I'm really intrigued to hear more about Connective and about what you do and who your typical customers are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a pretty cool story. As for myself, I have been in sales for most of my career, but probably specifically within the logistics and supply chain space for the past 15 years. And I've had the fortune to support quite a bit within that space. Obviously, there's a lot of different elements there, but parcel shipping, e-commerce, obviously freight, 3PL now, software, so the tech side of it as well, even in some engineering as well. So it's really like this space. I'm involved with a lot of professional organizations, love learning, love sharing my insight. So I was really excited to jump on the podcast and talk shop with you.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you on. And as I said, we're really intrigued and keen to hear more. So why don't we start by let's exploring some of the kind of themes out there and what you're seeing in terms of the issues and themes in the logistics sector broadly, but more specifically in the 3PL space as well.
Oh gosh, what am I seeing themes? So there is a lot to process within this space. And I think if you go back to, if you go back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, really pre-COVID, supply chain was not a household vocabulary word, right? You ordered something on Amazon, you went to Target and picked something up, and there wasn't a lot of thought into how that product got onto the shelf or got delivered to your house. And I think COVID transformed that whole process into more of that household name, where we obviously got really sick and tired of, we're having supply chain issues, but it really brought to light that there are a lot of obstacles and challenges that retailers and merchants and manufacturers have, not just producing goods, but then storing them and then getting them to their customers. I think that those challenges and obstacles have always existed. They just haven't been in the forefront of a broader conversation. And I think what I'm seeing now, what we've seen a lot of is you're seeing that broader conversation really drive the importance of supply chain discussion within an organization up to the top. You're seeing organizations move to leadership moves to supply chain officers. So you're seeing CEOs that are coming from the supply chain side. So I think it's a really fascinating time. I think there's a lot of sustainability questions in play around supply chain in terms of, customer expectations. There's obviously some changing geopolitical, environmental factors that are always going to come into effect. But at a very high level, I think just in general, supply chain itself has become a central focus for businesses globally in terms of how they bring their goods to market and the leadership decisions behind that.
Absolutely concur with that. And Conectiv has a really unique position, both as an integrated logistics operator and a manufacturer.
It does.
And your role as a director of sales is interesting in that mix. So what are you seeing as the challenges to growth, and how have you approached and overcome those? And what have been the milestones that have kind of really propelled your growth going forward?
Yeah, Connective has a really unique story, and it's one that kind of drew me to it when I took on the role about 2 years ago. For most folks aren't going to recognize the Connective name, but in a past life we were Technicolor. Technicolor, the supply chain side of Technicolor, kind of emerged from the need to support some of our manufacturing capability in the packaged media space. So for those of us old enough to have grown up with CD or played Xbox games before they were streamed in or digital accessed, you probably remember going to the store and waiting on your newest release. That was Connective behind the scenes, driving the supply chain for these labels and these studios to get the product from not just manufacturing, but through to end user. And so we rebranded to Connective, and we've kind of taken our expertise and what we developed over 30 years in supporting, packaged media and merchandise, and we've kind of expanded that to other verticals, things that fit really well, retail, specific, manufacturing niches. That expansion into those other verticals, they have presented challenges. I think in whole, the 3PL space within the U.S. is a little bloated right now. I think retailers, businesses, it represents some challenges trying to filter through and find the right 3PL partner. And because of those challenges, I think what you end up with is you have a lot of players out there that have really negative experiences or bad taste in their mouth from a 3PL that didn't execute on the promises that they said they were going to, but probably didn't do so because it wasn't the right fit. And I think that we've really invested in a discovery process and a focus on understanding what our client or prospect needs and ensuring that there is a fit there. Jumping on the bandwagon and throwing a rate out, or, hey, we can do that, and moving forward. Yeah. So, I mean, that would be, piece of advice as well, kind of out there for all the folks listening is, if you're evaluating a 3PL, know yourself and then do your homework and, know what you need and then come to the table with that 3PL and make sure that 3PL, there's a fit there with that 3PL.
But very sage advice indeed. Thank you, Matt. And I'd love to explore how you're using AI, approaching AI Connective. You talked about a few things that are really interesting there, the sort of customer satisfaction piece, speed as well, quality. But what's your experience of AI?
Sure. So, I mean, from an organizational standpoint, our president, Rob, is very focused on customer centricity, right? So focusing on our client, our customer, and that often means in a very weird way, focusing on their end users. And I think when we're evaluating automation, it's always kind of in the scope of the processes that we run with our facilities, the people who move through, that our clients' products move through. And I think AI is a fantastic tool, and it's one we began leveraging within the scope of those processes. So if the goal is to get a product out of our warehouse into the end user faster, right? We're obviously have a process that has to happen for that product to come off the shelf, get labeled, and then go out the door. So it's often evaluating that process and finding, for lack of a better term, kind of leaning on Lean Six Sigma, but finding the waste, finding the bottlenecks, and then looking at specific tools that might be able to help us there. So we have colleagues that have had negative experiences because they probably approached it wrong, not because the tool itself was a bad idea. And so I think if you kind of approach it within that process and say, hey, here are the 7 steps that are happening. This is taking too long, or it's costing us too much money. Is there a place there we can eliminate steps or do a step better? And then going out and looking for tools specifically focused on addressing that specific need. And I really think that's the way to go. In our case, it is the way to go. But I think, most operators out there, in-house warehouses, logistics operations, and 3PLs, I think those that do it that way are going to probably see the most success.
Yeah, interesting. And I mean, your business has traditionally been about relationships as well. How do you go about that kind of balancing, introducing new technologies with maintaining that kind of the human element at the same time?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We actually utilize, it's probably, I don't know if it's an actual AI agent, call it kind of like a chat bot, but we utilize that within our freight division and our broker division and it kind of came from customer feedback, from our carrier feedback that stated, hey, we need faster response times. I have questions about loads. I need to have answers about that so I can make a decision whether or not I want to support that load or not. And so we started looking at how can we improve communication speed to carriers? And we found this tool, but it was really fascinating. It did. And for a lot of carriers, they loved it. But there was always a segment of carriers, they're like, I don't want to talk to a bot, right? And so we went back to the provider and we said, look, this is the challenge we're having. This isn't a small number. It's not the majority, but it's still a actionable concern, right? And so we ended up building in parameters that if a carrier did not want to communicate with a bot and indicate that in the chat in some form or fashion, it would immediately push to a person. So we satisfied that specific carrier without sacrificing the benefits of the tool. And I think that was a really cool approach to kind of managing relationships in a very relationship-driven industry and still leveraging the expertise the tool might bring, or the cost savings, or the efficiency, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it's a great example. It kind of underlines what you said about that, the customer centricity in terms of focusing on their needs and addressing that. So thanks for that. A question we like to ask is, with the benefit of hindsight, and if you had a time machine, for example, and you went back 12 months, what would you do differently?
If I had a time machine, I'd go back and buy some Google stock. But if we're only talking about 12 months, boy, what would I do differently? I mean, so from a sales perspective, that's what I'm bringing to the table here. Yeah, probably, I mean, to be frank, conversations like this, what we're having here, where we're just talking about experiences, what works, what doesn't. I really wish that I would have engaged at that level a year ago, not only from a sales perspective, but from my own professional development perspective. Leveraging LinkedIn was something that I hadn't done for the vast majority of my sales career. It's something I started really in the last 6 months, and I've experienced a huge level of jump in knowledge. And a lot of that's just reading other insightful posts or engaging with my connections on things that they post and the conversations those lead to. From an operations standpoint, that's a difficult question. So we have a facility in Nashville that's fully automated. It uses AutoStore. It's fantastic. And we went through an optimization project. And I think if you asked our leadership as we went through that optimization project, what would you have done differently? I think there would have been probably more viable answers in terms of how we optimized that facility with clients, how we moved certain clients out and certain clients in, and that whole process. I wasn't necessarily a big part of that, but in terms of this conversation, I think an organization that executes what it thinks is its best action plan, but then steps back and says, well, that didn't go exactly how we wanted. What could we have done differently? I think that's the type of organization most folks want to work with. I think that's the type of organization most employees want to work for. I know in that instance, looking back, I think there was some things that we probably would have tackled differently in that would have made it smoother for our clients and probably saved us some time and possibly money as well.
Thank you for that. Really insightful again as well. The last question is about AI, of course. And on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all and 10 is extremely or total confidence, how confident are you that AI will create a measurable value for your business in the next 12 months and then the next 5 years?
Gosh, 1 to 10. I mean, I think that AI, look, from a sales standpoint, I already use AI on a daily basis, right? I mean, my LinkedIn connections and the folks I call on the phone or I shoot emails to, my prospects and clients, they can probably right now still tell when I've leveraged AI to help me write something, but that will eventually become much more difficult to tell. I think the blending between AI generated and human generated is going to become much more difficult, probably even over the next year. So in terms of how I utilize AI on a daily basis, just in terms of my position in pipeline development and business development and sales, I would give it easily a 10. I think you're going to see more and more tools leveraged to position folks like me in front of the right people to get us in front of our clients. I think our operations is already leveraging AI. I think you're only going to see that increase. So I would say it's hugely important and fascinating, fun to
Great.
track and engage with.
So 10 on the first year, on 12 months. What would you say for 5 years as well? Is that would be the same or?
I'd be shocked if there are sales, from a sales profession standpoint, I would be shocked if there isn't a company out there globally that isn't leveraging AI heavily in 5 years. I'd be shocked. Absolutely. From an operations standpoint at 3PL, I'd probably put that in the same boat. I just don't see these tools as optional. I think they need to be integrated, implemented strategically, but I don't think they're optional. I think that's the direction we're headed.
Fantastic. Matthew, many thanks for that. That's been a great conversation with loads of insights for our audience. I've learned a lot about Conectiv and only whetted my appetite to hear a bit more about it. So if the folks out there want to get in touch with you and Conectiv, where should they go? What's your website and your socials?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always accessible on LinkedIn. You just search my name. Our website is Connective Supply Chain, www.connectivesupplychain.com. And you can shoot me an email, give me a call. I'm pretty accessible. My email is matt.spencer@connective-scs.com. I'm at a lot of trade shows here in the U.S. Not as much on the European side, but folks can obviously connect with me at those trade shows as well. And yeah, I'd love to talk shop.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we put all the links in the podcast description so everyone can find out a bit more about you and the company. And look, thanks again. It's been a great conversation, and thanks for everyone for joining today. And we'll see you in the next edition of the AI Ripple Effect. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny.